Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books presents My Daughter Left the Nest and Returned an S-Rank Adventure, Volume 9, by Mojikakiya, translated by Rhodesia, narrated by Derek Shoales. Chapter 111. The Night Sky as Seen from the Garden. The night sky as seen from the garden was covered in an array of twinkling stars. They would be momentarily shrouded by drifting clouds, only to be revealed again soon after. The garden itself felt detestably cramped, thanks to the cold stone walls that boxed it in on all sides. But the trees and the flowers were carefully tended to, and bloomed in beautiful colors, even when pruned into compact shapes. The air that descended from the sky was heavy and cold, not enough to induce frost, but enough to coat the leaves in evening dew, which glistened in the flickering light of the shinestones hung on the walls. At the center of the garden, and encircled by shrubbery, was a table furnished with a few chairs. A handsome man sat in one of these. He wore a white, well-tailored suit, and his blond hair seemed to glow gold as it caught the light. This was Benjamin, Crown Prince of the Rhodesian Empire. He had a slightly peeved frown on his face as his finger tapped away at the table. "Another failure. I must admit these successive failures have really taken the fun out of it."
"My deepest apologies. We ran into unanticipated trouble," said Francois, third son of Archduke Estigal, who had dropped to one knee beside the prince. He kept his head down. He was perfectly still, save for his eyes, which shifted restlessly. It was like he could feel someone watching him from every patch of darkness. Benjamin roughly scratched his head before sighing and slouching back into his chair.
"No, that part was fine. Thanks to that, we managed to lure out the elf. No, the real mishap was the fact that we failed to slay her." The plan to hunt down the elf in Findale had failed not once, but twice. One failure was understandable, yet even after learning from their mistakes, they were stopped by something completely unexpected the second time around. Right after this botched attack, the elf had appeared in the capital to make a direct attempt on Benjamin's life. No doubt she had grown impatient upon the realization that her barrier was imperfect. But Schwartz and Hector had kept her at bay, and they should have been enough to kill this would-be assassin. That's how it was supposed to be. To think the black-haired Valkyrie would show up. Francois's brow twitched.
"She's involved?"
he muttered, raising his head. "That she is. And thanks to her, the elf got away again, even with Schwartz and Hector working together." Benjamin glanced over his shoulder. "What happened to Maitreya, I wonder? Do you think she's dead already?"
"If she were dealing only with the exalted blade, it would be safe to assume so. But the Red Ogre would do no such thing. That is simply the sort of man he is."
This response came from a man in a white robe with the hood pulled down over his eyes. Schwartz, the blue flame of calamity. Benjamin grinned. "You have quite a high opinion of him. In other words, he's a softy. Is that it?"
"He is soft indeed, but not weak. When it comes to him, his indulgence is also his strength. The Lucretian noble girl and the failure boy were both taken in by his kindness. There's a possibility the imp will also be enticed to his side."
"Oh, a swindler, then." "Schwartz, you were traveling with him for a while. You haven't been wheedled by him, have you?"
"The false persona took to him. That's precisely why I know how he operates."
"Your betrayal. That's the one thing I like to avoid."
"My betrayal?"
Schwartz's gaze sharpened under his hood.
"You took the words out of my mouth. You haven't developed any attachment to the Crown Prince's position, have you?"
Benjamin averted his eyes, turning his sour gaze skyward. "Don't worry. I'm not going to get in the way of your research or your curiosity." Francois looked between the two men, a bewildered look on his face. Schwartz folded his arms and let out a disgruntled sigh.
"Well, so be it. In any case, there's no doubt they will become a hindrance sooner or later."
"It's rare to hear that from you.
Well, I understand where you're coming from. The black-haired Valkyrie has already impeded our plans several times before. Is it about time for us to settle the score for good? Whatever you do, be careful. If you're too flashy, you might garner the attention of the church.
Benjamin sighed and kicked back.
Just when I thought we could finally get the elf out of the way, another strange ingredient finds its way into the mix. It's nothing but trouble.
His eyes shifted to Francois.
I should prepare your next job, then. Don't mess up this time. You may go. Stand by and await orders.
Yes, sir, Francois answered, looking distinctly nervous. He stood up and saluted, then turned to leave the garden. Benjamin propped his head up with one hand.
We have more enemies, which means we'll need more pieces on our side, he muttered. Good grief. We'll need to do something about those troublemakers before they can meet up with the elf. Half measures will not be enough to stop them. You must send your most skilled, said Schwartz.
Benjamin stood and drew the dagger at his hip.
Or you could just take this seriously. Well, I know you're not the type. I've got no interest in playing politics. Just be thankful I'm playing along with your childish hobbies. Yeah, I know.
The prince nicked the tip of his finger against the dagger, drawing a swelling bead of blood from the thin, horizontal slice. He thrust out his palm and muttered something under his breath. The blood trickled to the table, and as he chanted, he began using his bleeding finger to draw something, a magic circle. From the letters and symbols came a faint red light, which grew in strength the closer the circle came to its completion. Pale, transparent spirits seemed to coil around Benjamin. Eventually, a black swirl of power manifested at the center of the circle, taking on a humanoid shape in the air. Benjamin nodded in satisfaction and continued chanting and drawing. A tepid wind brushed the surrounding leaves as it whirled up into the sky. The garden was gradually filled with a peculiar presence. Watching with folded arms, Schwartz muttered, Will this battle raise waves in the flow of events? That remains to be seen. Belgrieve found it a bit dizzying to look up at the ramparts that seemed to reach for the heavens. He nearly staggered and had to brace his foot to catch himself. In Turnera, he'd often heard of Rhodesia, the capital city of the Rhodesian Empire, from the peddlers, performers, and wanderers who passed through. The empire boasted a long history, and its central city was said to be dazzling and vast. Foreign travelers would find themselves in awe of its size and the magnificence of its architecture. Belgrieve was essentially a country boy who'd just come to the big city. He was already overwhelmed just by the outer walls that rose so much higher than the ones in Yobam and Istafar. Findale had been a large place, but the imperial capital was incredible. When he'd glimpsed it from afar, it had been nighttime, and he'd only seen black, flat shapes amidst the shadows of the mountains. Now that it was up close and illuminated by numerous torches, he could see all the old scars of battle left in various places, which spoke to the many years these walls had held strong. I'd have taken my time looking around if I'd come under any other circumstances, Belgrieve thought with a wry smile. He lightly slapped at his cheeks to get himself back on track. He hadn't come to sightsee. After getting in touch with Angeline's party, Belgrieve had been transported by Maitreya's magic to somewhere near the capital. The imp had insisted, It's finally time to show you what I can do. Her magic made use of shadows, apparently, and she'd boasted that no one else in the world could imitate her. Belgrieve was quite dim when it came to magic in general, and didn't quite get it, but he understood well enough that teleportation was an incredibly advanced technique. Not even Kasim and Maria had managed to learn it. This was the first time Belgrieve had experienced teleportation. At first, it felt like he had sunk into a pool of water and was drifting through impenetrable pitch-black darkness for some time, during which he couldn't make anything out no matter how hard he strained to see. Then, suddenly, he felt like he was floating, and by the time he realized it, he was standing somewhere unfamiliar. Maitreya, evidently, didn't want to open a portal anywhere too crowded, so she had formed at a safe distance from their destination. From there, it was less than an hour's walk to reach the city. They were passed by several carriages along the way, which were overtaken by several more in turn. It was common sense not to travel at night, but soldiers were stationed along the stretch from Findale to the imperial capital, guaranteeing the safety of wayfarers. Thus, there were stagecoaches and peddlers hurrying hither and thither, even into the late hours of the night. The way that goods could be moved safely regardless of the hour surely helped to bolster the city's economy.
And Prince Benjamin's pretty amazing, not only for suggesting these measures, but for implementing them himself,
Belgrieve observed. They hadn't entered the city yet, but even at twilight there was a flourishing market stretched out before the city walls. Benjamin was undoubtedly a skilled statesman if his policies led to this much prosperity.
But to think he's a fake.
That was precisely why it felt a bit unfortunate to have him as an enemy. From the perspective of those ignorant of the truth, he was a great benefactor who had improved everybody's quality of life. Witnessing the results firsthand, Belgrieve was overcome by rather conflicted feelings.
For everyone just doing their best to make ends meet, what would it really matter to them if the prince were real or fake?
According to Angeline, who had met Satie, he had used innocent women to conduct terrible experiments behind the scenes. That was unforgivable, certainly. However, the prosperity he saw before him was also a reality. Belgrieve heaved a sigh.
I've grown too old to condemn every part of him on pure emotion.
What's on your mind?
Maitreya asked from beside him. Not only was she wearing a cloth hat to conceal her imp horns, she even went so far as to wear a hood over that.
It's nothing. I was just thinking that he's a formidable foe.
Getting cold feet? Now's your chance to run.
I'm scared, I admit it, but I can't run away.
Belgrieve chuckled and patted Maitreya on the head. She pouted.
Don't treat me like a child.
Right, sorry.
Maitreya scoffed, but she seemed a bit nervous, and she kept a tight hold on Belgrieve's cloak. It took around an hour to get to the capital from their teleportation gate. By then, the night had fully descended. The soft air that had filled the streets during the day had suddenly become bitingly cold. That was when Percival arrived, offering skewered meat and fried bread he had bought from the stalls.
For you. Thanks.
Looks cheap and tough.
Quit complaining.
Percival prodded at Maitreya, whose face had scrunched up at the sight of the food. Belgrieve surveyed his surroundings. The streets were boisterous enough that they could have mistaken it for a midday crowd.
Not used to seeing this? Percival asked him. Yeah, I wouldn't have expected to see any place so lively at night. It hardly ever happened in Orphan.
He recalled the drunkards who trudged around the bars at night, but the market stalls would be closed and deserted by sunset. Here, it looked like sleep was a foreign concept.
Though I suppose the Earth Naval was noisy at night, too.
That's just during a big wave, Percival said. He took a bite of meat and grimaced.
Too tough. You've been here before, right?
A long time ago. Back then, this area was where the beggars gathered. It wasn't like this.
This is thanks to the Crown Prince, right? Honestly, I'm having second thoughts about fighting him.
Belle, you have to understand. Villains are better than anyone at presenting a fair facade.
That's precisely what makes them so hard to deal with.
Exactly right. You can't just slice them up and be done with it. This is more than an adventurer can handle. That's why we need someone who isn't an adventurer. Percival chuckled, patting Belgrieve on the back. Belgrieve returned him a troubled laugh.
Don't expect too much from me.
Hey, I'm not passing it all off to you. You've got me and Kasim, and more than anything, Angeline.
You're right.
Belgrieve thought of his reliable daughter with a warm smile. With a polished-off skewer dangling from his lips, Percival called over to Maitreya. Hey.
What?
She answered, looking up from her half-eaten bun with a startled face.
What are you so antsy for? You'll just draw attention.
Can you blame me? We're on Benjamin's turf now. We can't be too cautious.
You said Schwartz didn't have too many comrades, but he can hire more, right? Were there any other sellswords like you? You only told us about the executioner.
Maitreya's eyes wandered in thought.
Probably. There should be more. Schwartz and Benjamin can't move out in the open, and Hector wouldn't be enough to handle all the necessary work. Nevertheless, he wasn't thoughtlessly recruiting people. More realistically, he should have 2 or 3 competent allies. Apart from that, there are a few bodyguards who keep themselves concealed around Benjamin. They are more like assassins, though.
You didn't have the chance to meet your comrades?
Belgrieve asked her. Maitreya shook her head.
I've met Hector, but we never had anything you could call a conversation. And I've perceived the guards around Benjamin, but I don't know what sort of people they are.
I see. So he was wary of people who might betray him, like you. Percival jibed cruelly. Maitreya puffed up her cheeks, then breathed out white fog.
And whose fault do you think that is?
Bell's fault. If it were up to me, you'd have croaked in Findale, Percival said, gesturing towards the hilt of his sword. Maitreya paled and swiftly ducked into Belgrieve's shadow. Belgrieve flashed a strained smile.
Percy, she's an ally now. Don't bully her.
Well, sorry. A cold wind swooped down, rustling their hair. Belgrieve felt a chill as it breached the slight opening of his collar to run down his back. While the sky was dotted with clouds, they weren't enough to detract from the starry expanse above. But this clear sky was a cold one indeed. We've got to meet up with the others, but I don't know where to start looking.
Good grief.
The connection had cut off before they could name a meeting place. When it came to the communication magic and Angeline and Satie's sudden chance encounter, it was nothing but one unforeseen happening after the next. Thus, there had been little opportunity to make concrete plans. They'd come to the capital all well and good, but Belgrieve had no idea what inn Angeline was lodging at, or where Salazar's laboratory happened to be. To make matters worse, it was almost midnight, and though the city was still very much alive, he did not feel keen on wandering through the unfamiliar streets in the dark.
For the time being, if we can just meet Lady Liz-a-Lot, then we can probably join up with Angie.
Sounds like a plan. Hey, short stuff. Archduke Estigal's villa has got to be near the royal palace, right?
It should be. That's quite far from here.
Can you do something with your teleportation magic?
Maitreya fidgeted and looked up at Belgrieve shyly.
I can, but I don't really want to.
Why not? Percival glared at her. Maitreya nervously went on.
If we enter while blending in with the crowd, they might not notice us, but they won't overlook the ripples in space caused by teleportation magic. We'll save time, but we might give our location away, and they'll know I joined your side.
Then what about how you warped us from Findale?
Their detection shouldn't extend beyond the capital. Near the palace, though, they've set up measures to detect the elf. Using teleportation around there is suicide.
I can definitely see them setting up defensive measures, especially against a foe who can freely go wherever she wants,
thought Belgrieve. Though he was a fake, their foe was still acting as the crown prince of the empire, and his accomplice was one of the greatest magicians on the continent. Percival's eyes narrowed as he stroked his chin. There aren't many folks who can use teleportation in the first place. I wonder where Satie picked it up.
I could see that girl picking it up like it's nothing, though.
Sure enough, which means she decided to hone her magic. Percival frowned discontentedly. It didn't sit right with him that his former rival in the sword arts had decided to veer off that track. Belgrieve closed his eyes.
Satie must have continued her training, just like the others, like Kasim and Percival. She had gained the strength to try to accomplish something.
He wondered if she might have done so as she looked for a way to restore his leg. And along the way, she had found something she had to protect. Though injured and in pain, she had refused help and fought on her own. That thought greatly pained Belgrieve. Having run away on his own once, he had to wonder if this was how his comrades had felt at the time.
Percy, I'm sorry,
Belgrieve said, bowing his head to Percival. Percival looked taken aback. That came out of nowhere.
Knowing someone's in pain, but they won't even ask for help, it's a terrible, alienating feeling. I understand that now. don't get sentimental now. Even if she refuses, we're going to help her. That should make up for it.
I see. I guess so. Belgrieve smiled awkwardly and tugged at his beard. Sorry about that. Got emotional there.
I know how you feel, but now's the time to look ahead and figure out what to do.
Yeah. In any case, we should cut down on teleportation. I don't know if the cab service is running at this hour, so let's just find a place to spend the night. We can start moving tomorrow.
All right. Not like we'll get anywhere searching the town at night anyways. Is that fine with you?
They turned to Maitreya, who nodded. Thus the three passed the towering walls. The road was lined with shops and eateries, but most had shuttered their doors and snuffed out their lights, quietly submitting themselves to a good night's rest. All that clamor outside had made the inner streets seem far quieter by comparison. And yet, the pubs that were still open had loads of people coming in and out of their doors. The streets were teeming with wandering inebriates who would occasionally be shaken from their stupor by soldiers on patrol. It was undoubtedly one of the liveliest night cities he'd been in. There were plenty of inns situated around the city gates. These buildings, big and small, still had their lights on, and most hosted bars of their own. This meant the guest lodgings on the second floor would be dead silent, even if the bars on the first floor were bursting with noise. It was a peculiar mismatch. They chose an inn at random and promptly dropped their bags after climbing up to their lodgings. On Maitreya's strong insistence, they had rented a large room with 3 beds. After hanging his cape on the wall, Percival rolled his shoulders and said, "How about a drink, then?" "1 cup won't hurt. I'm pretty sleepy, to be honest."
"I'm not going to have too much tonight. All right, let's go."
"What about you, Maitreya?" Before Belgrieve had finished asking, Maitreya tugged at his sleeve.
"Don't leave me alone."
"How scared are you?"
Percival wearily asked her. Maitreya turned away, pretending not to hear him. They descended to the first floor once more. The bar there was rowdy with guests and regular customers alike, all drinking their fill. In the corner, a traveling minstrel with a lute sang an old epic. It was a tale of heroic triumph dating back to the founding of the empire. The names of heroes Belgrieve had heard of as a child lingered in his ears for a few seconds before fading back into memory. Weaving their way through the crowd, they found some empty seats to collapse into. No sooner had they done so, Belgrieve could feel the strength draining from his body. It was midnight, and he would ordinarily have been asleep long before now. "What are you so tired for?" he muttered to himself as he rubbed his eyes. He hadn't even done anything yet. After ordering some drinks, Percival propped up his head with one hand.
"We'll need to be on our toes starting tomorrow, but tonight we need a proper breather."
"Please don't relax too much, or you'll regret it,"
Maitreya pleaded.
"It's just nagging and more nagging with you. If you're that scared, you want to sit on my lap or something?"
Percival pulled back his chair slightly and patted his knees. Maitreya discontentedly tapped her fingers against the table.
"Don't treat me like a child."
"What are you, then?"
Percival reached out and poked the imp on the forehead. Their banter was interrupted by the arrival of their beer steins. Seeing the white foam overflowing from the rim, Belgrieve gave his beard a troubled tug. "Ale, huh? It's been a while."
"No good with ale?"
"I think it's just about getting used to it. I'll gladly take it."
"You're childish in the oddest ways, you know,"
Percival mused before tossing back half of his stein in one gulp. Maitreya sipped at the foam and grimaced.
"Tastes cheap."
"Because it is cheap. That's about what you'd expect."
"I want to drink something better. You're an S-rank adventurer, aren't you? How about you order something palatable?"
"Oh, can it? I can't stand the taste of the expensive stuff."
"You've got a poor man's tongue."
"You're acting pretty high and mighty for an imp."
Now, don't fight." Belgrieve interceded before turning to his own brew. As Belgrieve nursed his beer and snacked on fried fish and potatoes, Percival, who was already on his second ale, leaned in.
"So, how does it look?" he asked. "We could talk specifics once we meet up, but you've got to have a rough outline worked out, right?"
Maitreya peered at him, too. Belgrieve laid his hands on the table and spoke in a subtly quieter voice.
The one vulnerability we can take advantage of is the fact that the Crown Prince isn't who he says he is.
And what are you going to do with that information?
I'm not sure yet. We need more information.
I see. And if we find anything unnatural, you're going to use it to crumble his standing.
Let's hope it works out like that,
Belgrieve said with a cynical smile. He sipped some ale as his gaze became distant.
Honestly, I think it's a miracle everything's gone this well so far. If things get dangerous, no, if Angie is ever in danger, I might have to give up on Satie.
I won't blame you, even if it comes to that. Percival smiled and violently patted Belgrieve on the back. Hey, don't make that face. It's not your personal problem. It's our personal problem.
Thanks.
You're weird.
Maitreya brought her stein to her lips, but she seemed to be lost in her own thoughts. Suddenly they heard a fracas brewing near the bar's entrance. At a glance, it seemed that two drunkards had started to fight. Belgrieve heard the sounds of shattered jugs and steins, bellowing and shouting, and, just as loud, the laughter and goading of other patrons.
Can't we have some peace and quiet?
That's a bar for you. The combatants started duking it out with their fists, but once they were really worked up, they drew daggers on each other. A palpable tension filled the air.
I should probably stop them,
thought Belgrieve. He was just about to stand up when someone else intruded between the dagger-brandishing men, landing a blow on one of them. The man collapsed to the floor, his eyes already rolled back in his skull. The other man had also been subdued with a submission hold by yet another interloper. It was quite a skillful maneuver, eliciting some cheers from the crowd. The pair that had quelled the fight wore matching uniforms emblazoned with the crest of the Church of Vienna. Belgrieve would have thought them clergymen if that was all there was to them, but the crest was slightly different from the familiar one, and they had swords sheathed at their hips. These were clearly no ordinary priests.
It's Templar. That's rare,
Percival murmured, his eyes narrowing.
From the church?
Yeah, they report directly to the papal court in Lucretia. In short, they're elites. Although there should be a branch in the capital. Maybe that's where they're from?
Percival had stopped in Lucretia before on his travels, and had apparently caught sight of the Templars there. The two Templars looked around the bar before promptly returning to their seats. Belgrieve frowned slightly as he looked at their profiles. The first of the two was a man with a solid physique, while the other seemed to be a beast man, a boy with rabbit ears that swayed above his head. The owner of the establishment rushed forth in a hurry, bowing his head to them again and again in apology and gratitude. In answer to this prostration, the burly man cockily leaned back in order to drink on the house. For his part, the rabbit boy looked rather apathetic as he stared absently off into space. Although Belgrieve himself did have a loose belief in Great Vienna, Charlotte's stories had left him with a sour impression of the church as an institution.
They're different from the Inquisition, right?
He wondered. He couldn't help but let his eyes drift towards them, only to catch the gaze of the rabbit-eared boy. Belgrieve hurriedly looked away, and, feeling a bit unsettled, drained his stein. He took a deep breath. Maitreya seemed to want to make herself scarce as she softly tugged at Belgrieve's sleeve.
The church is bad news. They'll kill me if they figure out I'm an imp.
Why does everything have to be so difficult with you? Hey, one more glass over here. How about you, Belle?
I'm good. Looks like Maitreya doesn't want to stick around, so I'll return to the room.
I see. Well, you take it easy. This is where it all begins.
Got it. Don't drink too much.
I know my limits.
Belgrieve clapped a hand against Percival's shoulder before leading Maitreya back to their room. Once the door was closed, Maitreya sat on the bed with a relieved look on her face.
Looks like the capital is full of enemies.
Knights Templar, huh?
The church was Charlotte's sworn foe, to be sure, but there was no sense in pointlessly starting fights with them. It would be best not to get involved with them. Belgrieve took off his coat and hung it on the back of a chair. For now, he needed to get some rest.
Finally, some relaxation.
Let me just make one thing clear.
Betrayal.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?